Welcome back to another episode of the D-League. Today, episode 22, and Bilal and we talked about MMORPG, so massively multiplayer online role-playing games, but today we're gonna talk about the more single-player variant, just role-playing games. And a role-playing game is pretty much that you as a player enter a set world with a fixed or customizable character, meaning either the character designer is already set for you, so you cannot switch anything up, or you can still create your own character and play the story with that character. And as the player, you also pretty much follow a set story. It's not like you write it yourself, but the developers programmed the story that you follow through from beginning to end. And this often includes different endings that you can trigger by doing different things in the game to make different decisions in the game. So maybe you have a very good ending, or maybe you have a bad ending where maybe your main character dies, something like that. And then concerning role-playing games, you also have a difference in the gameplay, which is either turn-based or real-time battle, which means that, if you take turns, then you have your party or your character, and then you tell the character to attack, and it will attack. So kind of like, the old Final Fantasy games, or maybe Pokemon. Pokemon is also pretty much turn-based, while real-time battle is pretty much that you move around with your character, so you can evade attacks yourself, or you can kind of just attack, and you're not bound to taking turns with the enemy. Role-playing games mostly are pretty text-heavy to tell the story, or very dialogue-heavy if it's not written text. And they nearly always include a character level system and equipment system. So you have better equipment, like better swords, or your character levels up, and then you can learn new skills, and your character gets stronger. And I think overall the average playtime is pretty much between 30 hours and 60 hours today, when playing casually, of course, and depending on how many research or like discovering you're doing in the game. Anything to add, Bilal?
No, not really.
So then let's continue. As a player, when you start an RPG, what is pretty much the let's say the most generic RPG for you as a player?
Like generic, like a name of a generic RPG, or?
No, I mean like the gameplay you expect from a role-playing game. Is it turn-based? Is it real-time battle today?
Okay.
Stuff like that.
Yeah, I guess I kind of just expect a game. I typically think combat, because like most games are combat, but they don't have to be. But I think like a game with some sort of combat that's either like strategy or skill-based. So like maybe hack and slash or something like World of Warcraft's like spell system, or I should say Skyrim's spell system rather, and then along with that, like levels of progression. So kind of a main level, and then levels in certain skills, like say marksmanship if you use a bow, or I don't know, crafting if you make things, basically. So yeah.
Okay, I see. And for me, it's all. I think maybe I'm used to the old school RPGs, but I think like the really popular RPGs or the games that created the RPG genre were actually turn-based. Like the Final Fantasy games were turn-based until part maybe 11, the MMO one. I think 10 was still turn-based. And yeah, like the popular Japanese RPGs in the past, they were pretty much turn-based, while I think the Western ones were more action-based. Like you had dungeon crawlers or something like Diablo, which is real-time. Like I think they thought about making it turn-based, but then went for a real-time model. And yeah, I think I cannot actually think of a turn-based an old school turn-based RPG that was made in the West.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't play that many, so I can't really say any for sure.
But
I mean, I guess there was. I think the old Fallouts were, and I think there was a game called Wasteland and Wasteland 2.
True. Yeah, that's true. Fallout. I think Fallout is what was also real time. You just moved around, and then you got into a battle screen if you encountered an enemy.
Oh, okay.
I think, but maybe that's Fallout 2, and maybe 1 was different. I haven't played the old Fallouts, so I don't have much of a clue about the series. But yeah, I think like the the generic setting is probably medieval, right? When you think of an RPG, then you think like knights and mages and maybe dragons and some evil villain that you have to defeat for some reason.
Yeah, but usually an era where you use swords and magic, typically around medieval, I'd say, yeah.
Yeah, I guess that setting is like the basic setting, because you have every class from like melee fighter, ranged fighter, spellcaster, healer, and then some stuff in between like assassin or maybe a druid or maybe a thief, something like that. I mean, if you imagine something like this in a sci-fi setting, you would probably say, okay, the mage is useless because my 200-meter big mech is kind of invincible to fire and ice, or it doesn't work in space. Where do you get the fire from if there's no air?
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that like the medieval setting is very generic. But sci-fi has also become very popular, right?
Yeah, I mean, you have like Mass Effect, I think, is kind of the biggest RPG. It's linear though in comparison to something like Skyrim, but it is still an RPG.
So okay, those are pretty much the generic setting. So I guess RPGs are always kind of fixed, like a fixed storyline, right? So as a player, you probably play an RPG because of the interesting story. Where well, how should I mean? If you just want to fight, then you probably play a different genre, maybe, or well, hack and slash RPGs are probably the subgenre if you hate story and you're just all about fighting. But I guess the important thing is that as a player you play an RPG for the experience of getting thrown into a world that you don't know, and you kind of learn things as you progress in the game, like maybe who actually is the bad guy, or who is that character, maybe which race is he or she from, and what's the background to that, and in that way, maybe as the player you are interested in the story because it's maybe just a battle between good and bad, or rich and poor, or maybe you just want to kind of learn more about the interesting world, like the world that the developers designed, where everything is completely different. You don't have humans, but maybe something like fish people, or maybe it's underwater, and I mean, as a human, you cannot really experience living underwater that much.
Yeah.
So maybe it's just interesting to experience that.
Mm-hmm.
Or don't you agree that it's more about, well, kind of enjoying the ride, like you just get into like a roller coaster, you just get into the roller coaster and then you just enjoy the ride with all the ups and downs and turns, and yeah.
I mean, I think with RPG they try to make they try to mimic some real life, but in like a different world or a different scenario. So I mean, so you get progression because life is about progression, and then you get like some compelling story, or I don't know, something like that. So that like it feels like you're kind of living through the experience, I guess. I mean, I think with a game like Skyrim, I play less for, I don't know, because I kind of always liked Elder Scrolls lore / story, because it's interesting and that it'll just grab an inspiration from like almost everything else, because you have like dragons, vampires, werewolves, and the more like weird stuff like Morrowind was more kind of occult, or I guess I don't know, weird creatures rather than medieval like things. So you kind of have lore from everywhere, which I thought was interesting. But I kind of play the story once in Skyrim, and then like most of the hours in it are just me trying to gain levels. So I mean, I think it depends on what kind of RPG. Because with Skyrim, I just play to kill a bunch of guys and level up. But then, I don't know, like Mass Effect, like that game you might play over like 7 times because you want to try all the different kinds of stories and experience I don't know, what happens in that world of, I guess, immersion. So
okay, I see. So I think a good comparison is that when you play an RPG, it can be something like having an interactive book, or maybe let's say like a movie, where you have a story, but well, in case of RPGs, you can most of the time also influence it through your actions as well. Well, of course, you have games like you mentioned, Skyrim, that you maybe play more for the like the discovering of the world.
Yeah, that's true.
I guess. I mean, you might not be that focused on going from A to B and from B to C to progress the story.
Yeah.
Because you just want to kind of see, like Skyrim is more open world more of an open world RPG, I think, where you actually have the option of exploring a vast world in the game, but then compared to maybe something like what would be a good comparison? I'll just go back into like far back in time and say something like a Secret of Mana, where you are pretty much stuck in places until you get a flying like a dragon that you can ride to fly around in the world. But even then, it's more like there are some islands or some areas that you can visit earlier. Like you need to go there later on anyway. But yeah, some stuff is extra, but you just kind of think, yeah, I just progress how the game tells me to do it. Like you go from town A to town B, and then maybe you fly to town C, or like I think there's one island where you have some imposter king, and you need to kill that guy to progress the story. And yeah, so you don't have the urge, or you don't have the ability to just say, yeah, I just wander around. I wonder what's on that mountain, because yeah, later on in the game you have to go there anyway. So that's very linear compared to Skyrim. Of course, it's really old. I mean, that's on Super Nintendo, so not.
Yeah, I mean, Pokemon
very
also
limited.
kind of has a linear aspect. So I mean, like you need to get like fly and surf and other stuff before heading to a certain destination. Like, and you don't get them until you like progress the main storyline.
Yeah, because you get them from an arena battle, or something like that.
Yes, like you'll do a gym, or you'll have to go somewhere, and then something will trigger, and yeah. Or I mean, I think the new one did something different with like. I know they removed hidden machines or something like that. So now, I think you'd like. I can't remember exactly. They did something very different with like surf and fly and all that. But what happens is you get instead of getting the HMs, you just get like the new Pokemon. So like you'll get like a Taurus to do strength or something. I can't remember which one it was. Instead of actually teaching something strength, so now you don't need like an HM machine Pokemon or something like that now. Anyway,
okay.
But yeah, they still have some like progression where you need to get a Pokemon that can do like a move before getting somewhere, but you still can go to like certain areas and like do whatever you want, like with that limitation. Yeah. So like, for example, you could go and run into a certain bush to catch a Skarmory before you continue the main storyline or something like that. If you wanted to.
I think right now I just had the thought that Pokemon is a pretty terrible RPG, because it's like you don't have much of a story, but it's more about catching Pokemon and then grinding to get them to the maximum level.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
Or evolving, so I guess Pokemon is a game that I don't know about the most recent games, but I think in general you play them to get like the best Pokemon or your favorite Pokemon. So it's more about fighting or catching the Pokemon than actually playing the story.
Yeah,
because it's always you start as a new trainer as a kid. And then your goal is kind of, be the best Pokemon trainer. So it's like the same thing, just 10 times over.
The only thing is, with the new ones, the stories are a lot more fleshed out. Like, they were actually pretty good in comparison to the old ones. But, I mean, yeah, obviously they're still targeted towards kids, so they're a little cheesy, but they're still, like, much better than before. And the other thing is, I think the reason why it's appealing is because you kind of choose like if you want to just fill your Pokédex, or if you want to actually battle and be good, or if you want to just, I don't know, do the story. But yeah, I mean, in terms of the grinding, it's pretty bad in that regard. But it can be fun because, like, even if you're a casual player and you don't care about having like actual good Pokemon or about like your effort values or anything, I think you just kind of have fun like battling certain trainers and like use it like because there are kind of trainers all over the place that can help you level up. And then like you go through, because there's kind of the main storyline, and then there's also like battling all the guys, so like beating the Elite Four and stuff like that. So they're kind of separated in terms of like stories. So there's kind of like main quest and then be the best trainer quest, I guess.
Yeah.
So.
It kind of reminds me of Diablo 2, where like you got the story, but it's like, okay, you got Diablo and he's running around and monsters show up, and then you go from town to town and they have problems with the monsters, and so you kind of hunt Diablo, and that's the story. And the thing why the game is so addicting is because of the skill tree and the different classes you can play. And so it's more about just running around killing monsters and getting weapons and leveling up and trying new skill builds. Then, I mean, if you play the game once and you do you do the main quest or maybe some side quests. I mean, not every quest that you get in the game is actually relevant to completing the game. Then it's like, yeah, okay, I played it once. Yeah, but I don't have to play it again for the story. You just say, yeah, fuck it. I just want to level up and get my... I played Necromancer last time, so I play Assassin now, and I want to check out how the traps work or like the skill tree works. And I guess that's kind of like Pokemon-ish, where you just say, I play it once, and then you know the story, and then you just lean back and grind all day.
Yeah. I think grinding can either be like boring and tedious or like relaxing or fun, I think, depending on like what kind of grinding it is.
Yeah, yes, sir, go on.
I was gonna say, because I mean, in Skyrim, like grinding still feels like gameplay, I think, but it can get boring. Like if you like grinding a spell, like I don't know, like Alteration is boring because I mean you just kind of press the button a lot, but you kind of do it while you're doing something else. But I mean, like training a combat skill, like I don't know, one-handed or something like that, is kind of fun still because you just kind of run into a place and start hitting guys with swords. So
who's that guy?
But yeah, so I don't know. It could depend. Like it can be fun, like just running up to a bandit and one-shotting him with the execution because he has no health. And then also it can be fun, like actually having a challenge and having to use the right spells and right positioning to fight a guy. But I mean, the combat is not as fleshed out in comparison to something like, I don't know, like Nier Automata. I mean, in Skyrim you kind of just hit and block and you still like lose health. But in Nier Automata, you actually have to play against different guys very differently because they have like different kinds of attacks. They don't like they don't all have melee attack, ranged attack, and spell. Like in Skyrim, like a Frost Atronach and a person both will cast like a frost spell, right? And they have the animation, so it kind of runs the same way. It just looks different. Whereas like in Nier Automata, like a boss will actually do something different. I can't really remember the enemies in it right now, but different bosses obviously do different things. So yeah, you need to dodge at the right times and hit at the right times and whatever else hack and slash gameplay.
Yeah, I guess that's why that subgenre of RPGs are called hack and slash, because it's all about hacking and slashing, and so more about the battle than the story. While I think, like for example, the old Final Fantasy games, at least 6 to 9. I I don't know about the really old Final Fantasy games because they were a bit too clunky for me. I didn't actually play them for a long time. But like Final Fantasy 6 to 9, they are more about the great storyline. You just want to know you. It's like you want to progress to continue the story because it's so interesting. It's not like maybe you need to grind or you want to grind to make the game a bit easier for you as the player, so you have more money to buy more items or to level up your characters, and then maybe you are the same level as the boss instead of 10 levels below. So you have a more easier boss fight, but so you kind of grind to just make it easier for you to progress, so you can kind of just enjoy the story. And I mean, in something like Skyrim, you run around and you do quests, but in Final Fantasy, you have this party of characters that have their own background, and I mean, they are set characters. So, like you always have that one main character or a set of main characters, depending on how many you start with. But then you get more and more party members, and then you need to go to different places to maybe stop the bad guy, and then maybe actually a character dies. So it's like you continue through the story, and then a character dies, and then as a player you kind of feel sad as well because you didn't expect that, or
Yeah.
I think in Final Fantasy VII, people were pretty shocked that Aeris dies in the story. Because, I mean, before you had your party and kind of continued throughout the game. And then, yeah, you had that very dramatic death in Final Fantasy VII. And people were shocked about that kind of... let's say like the turn that the story took in that case.
Oh yeah, was that a playable character that
Yeah,
you couldn't use anymore?
It was a normal party member.
Okay, I see.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess it's kind of as a player. I think in these story-driven RPGs, you care about the ending, while in something like I don't know, what's the ending to Skyrim? Is it just the bad guy dies and you win?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, yeah, it's not really. It's kind of generic, kill the bad guy, but it's like it's more. I don't think the ending's interesting. I think what's more interesting is like learning dragon language stuff and playing through it, and like the whole everybody's worried about both war and the world ending and shit like that. But I mean, it's not really. Yeah, I mean, the ending is like just Alduin, the bad dragon who wanted to eat the world, is dead, basically. So.
Okay, so it's like 10 seconds, a dragon dies, you win.
Yeah, I think
credits roll.
Yeah, I think what's more interesting about Skyrim is like pretty much the side quests are more interesting. Like in my opinion, like all the Daedric stuff is most interesting. And then like I don't know, the main quest is just fun. It's like okay storyline, kind of generic, and that kind of thing. I mean, like yeah, like Mass Effect 3 also suffers the generic save the world storyline. I mean, it's weird because it's kind of a boring storyline, but they're still like fun to play, and you kind of want to play through them anyway. I think mainly because you want to see how the characters react to it, regardless of like if it's just the world's gonna die.
So it's more about the characters inside the game than like the whole story around the characters. You know what I mean, right?
Yeah, that's Mass Effect. I think Skyrim is just like lore, like be interested in lore, side quests, play the game. So I mean, it's just kind of an all-around fun thing, but like without a fleshed out story.
Well, to be honest, when I was younger, I didn't actually care about the story. I don't know how it was about you with you. If you when you played RPGs, if you actually cared about the story, but for me, it was just just playing a game, and in the end, I mean, as a kid, you might not understand all the plot, or maybe you just don't give a damn, and you don't even read the text, except for go to city, blah blah blah, and then you go there because okay, I need to go there.
Yeah, what was interesting? What was interesting is like when I was a kid, I would never play or I would never watch movies at all because like I thought it was boring and you didn't do anything, and so I guess I really didn't care about plot that much. I think yeah, I don't think I really paid attention to story at all either as a kid because it's like you don't really pick up on things when you're a kid and you kind of just want to do stuff. So I mean, like the first games I played, I never really played campaign. I kind of just hop into whatever battle you can do. Like in Machines, I would hit skirmish, or like I don't know, in Pokemon, I just battle guys. I wouldn't really care too much about story.
Yeah. I mean, for me, like the RPGs that I played as a child didn't have that much story anyway, I guess. Like Secret of Mana or Secret of Evermore. These games were also more about battling, because they were real-time battles and not like turn-based. So you kind of and they were also pretty linear, so you kind of just followed the game, and you were I was playing the game to fight bosses and enemies and just find better weapons and just to have fun killing stuff pretty much.
Yeah.
So like some years ago I noticed, okay, I played the games, I completed the games for like 10-15 times, but I have no clue what the games were about. I guess if you want to kind of make a game for children, maybe make them enjoyable without understanding the plot, or make it easy to understand the plot just from following the game. Like if you get betrayed, then you kind of see in the game that you get betrayed. It's not like you just get 2 pages of text explaining how you were betrayed, but I mean, you have something like a cutscene or maybe an in-game video where you kind of see your character getting backstabbed by a party member or by somebody that you thought was a friend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that way, even if you are a child, you just see the video and okay, so it's like that. So maybe you skipped the text, or you didn't understand the text, what the backstabbing is about, why he backstabs you, but okay, that guy just backstabbed me.
Yeah. In a kid's head, it'll just register as like that guy's a dick. If you can get that through, then that's kind of like what you're looking for. Because it's kind of, I think as a kid, you kind of just think like good, bad, I don't know, nice guy, mean guy. I mean, you kind of think in binary, right? You don't really think as in depth as like, I don't know, this guy had no choice or something like that.
If you actually think like that, I mean, if you have the option of shooting like villages, you run around and maybe you just kill the blacksmith because you just want to kill stuff, so you go into houses and you just kill people, and you're like, okay, like you don't even know that you're being the bad guy right now because you just go around killing innocent people. But if you have the option, yeah. But for more grown-up gamers, I mean, it can be fun just playing around, like testing the limits of the game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in Skyrim, you can also kill villagers, right?
Yeah, in Skyrim, the annoying thing is like the people who go unconscious. I mean, you kind of just run. You can like I have a couple saves where I just kind of saw how many guys I could one shot in in all the cities to see how unpopulated I could make Skyrim. But I don't know. Yeah, you can definitely kill random people and civilians, but you get like bounty.
Okay, but if there's nobody to kill you or hunt you, then
yeah.
Bounty's gone, huh?
Then you only have guards who respawn, so that's the only way to get bounty.
Oh, that's cheap.
I think when you come back, you can I think you can kill them all in one, and then nobody will come back. But then you have to. I don't know if you can wait, but I know that if you come back, fast travel somewhere else and come back, then some guards will be there again.
Anyway, is there, as a player, is there any game that you really think did something very different concerning in the RPG genre?
I wouldn't know, because I mean I don't really play that many RPGs. I'm more into linear story, but I think I mean, I played Skyrim, Nier Automata, Mass Effect. In terms of different, I mean, I think they all kind of have, really good highlight. I mean, Nier Automata did a very interesting both story and story immersion, as well as gameplay. I mean, it was just, altogether a really interesting story and game. I mean, I think that's kind of, the new RPG that I recommend, the latest one. I don't know. I can't say for sure if it did something crazy different.
For me, I think the most recent example is maybe Undertale. At least the game had such a big hype around it because of the very different battle system, where it's kind of a bullet hell mechanic, like a bullet hell system where it's turn-based, and if you get attacked, then for example a flower spawns flower petals, and or the skeleton characters in the game, when you fight, they have attacks that resemble bones, where you have to either jump over them or not jump, depending on the color. And so it's more maybe something like mini games where you need to avoid attacks and then you attack yourself if you want to attack. In the game, you can finish the game without killing anything, because you can always talk to the let's say monsters or enemies to make them like you, and then you just win by becoming friends,
Being persuasive.
kind of.
Yeah.
And so there was something that players really liked or found surprising, because in most RPGs, like we said, it's running around killing stuff, and in that game you could actually finish the game without killing anything if you want to. And the game had different endings depending on if you killed nothing, if you killed at least one monster or one enemy, or if you killed everything. So you could run around and literally kill everything, and then if you would have a random battle, then it would just say, nobody came because you killed everything. But the game, you got the random battle, but then it said, nothing is there to fight you, kind of. So that's it was good replay value, because the gameplay was so different depending on what ending you aimed for, or especially as a first game playthrough without knowing what the game is about. You would first maybe you kill monsters, and then you understand, okay, I can befriend them, and but then it's already too late because you killed some stuff. Then you get the neutral ending.
Yeah, I see.
And so that game actually had a really big hype because of the story, the battle system, and also the retro is so stupid, but more chiptune music.
Yeah, I see.
So it was the whole package that people like.
I also heard it was supposed to be really sad, but I still haven't tried it.
All right then. Shall we talk about more examples, or should we head straight to the developer section? What do you think?
I'm personally ready for dev.
All right.
Whatever you want, yeah.
Yeah. Just real quick, concerning examples, I think there is a big difference between Japanese role-playing games and American or European ones. So if you want to check out which games actually exist in the genre, then you should probably check out both kind of sub-genre of the RPG genre, because the gameplay can be very different, or the whole design. I mean, Japanese RPGs tend to be more anime style.
Yeah.
I mean, just from the character design, how the characters look like. But and then you have is Bethesda American?
Yeah.
Okay, so in that case, you would have an American RPG where you kind of have the realistic approach to character design, and I would recommend checking out. On
that topic, actually, that's what I find pretty interesting between the two. Is it's really nice that I think oftentimes Japanese stuff just kind of goes with what's cool, regardless of what's realistic, and then American stuff kind of goes for realistic, but trying to stay cool. When I find that both having both is pretty cool, in terms of just whatever you're interested in playing at the moment. Because Nier Automata is one of the Japanese games with kind of anime style characters, and it's a very, very strange story, very far in the future, and every all the characters are androids, and like you're fighting against machine race, where like they're supposed to be not sentient, but you're supposed to be sentient androids. So, but yeah, I don't want to spoil anything. So that's kind of just what it is on the surface, which is pretty interesting. Where if you look compare it to Skyrim, like we said, it's just like a grizzled, realistic, like Nordic kind of medieval era.
Yeah, just to throw in some more names, I guess per the Persona and Shin Megami Tensei series are also kind of popular current or recent Japanese RPG series. For example, in Persona, you can you don't just play like you don't just walk around in dungeons and fighting, but you're just a regular school kid, so you can talk to other characters and become friends, and so that's kind of your party. So you or the gameplay is you go to school and then afterwards you kind of do the dungeons at night, for example. Yeah. All right, then let's go to the developer section. And well, for me, people probably would expect that, oh yeah, role-playing game story is the most important thing. But like what we talked about is that actually the importance of the story depends on the focus of the game.
Yeah.
If like the selling point of the game is the special story or setting, then of course it's the main focus. Because you say, okay, I go with a more traditional battle system that resembles a different game, or that was there before. And in that case, yeah, the player feels kind of at home when fighting, but the storyline and setting are supposed to make him buy the game. I mean, if you are an indie developer and you say, yeah, I want to make a medieval theme and it's about killing a dragon, and you have swords and firebolts that you can shoot depending if you are a knight or a mage, then and the game costs $30, then the players would say, oh, why should I buy that game? I can get Skyrim for 10, right?
Yeah, I mean,
so
depends on how different the gameplay is. So, like, I mean, maybe, yeah, I don't know. Sorry, go ahead. But basically, like, the gameplay can't be Skyrim if it's going to be that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if the story is so generic, and then you also have a generic battle system,
yeah,
then like there's no reason to actually buy it except people just wanting to support an independent game developer. And so in that case, if the setting or story is the selling point, then the story is the main focus. But if you want to do something special concerning the battle systems or something like maybe like Undertale, then maybe the story is not the main focus. I mean, well, probably in Undertale it's still more about the story, but the story and the battle system work. They just work together.
Yeah.
So yeah, in this case, like the ideal would be, of course, that both are good or important.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think like in terms of saying, like, rather than saying like this genre's story is more important in this genre or combat's more important. You kind of like pick a focus for what you want your game to be, and then like you say which one's like more prominent. Like if you have more combat, then maybe you kind of skip a little work on the story and make it a bit smaller and scope it down, rather than like worry too much about like which one is more important in general.
Yeah, I guess also where you start with your development can be very different, because let's take Diablo 2 as an example. For example, the game has a story, but it is not that important, I think, for the most part that you are playing the game. Mm-hmm. And so if you would want to create Diablo 2, you might say, I'm going to create a character and monsters and try to make the battle system fun. And then, or you have a setting where you say, okay, it's going to be medieval again and good versus bad. And it's going to be kind of, in this case, a satanic demon design for the enemies. Mm-hmm. And then you just do that, and then you spin the story around this kind of battle theme. So it's kind of like, first you create pretty much everything gameplay wise, and then you just say, okay, how can I make it interesting to actually, or how can I give the monsters reason to be there? Something like that, you know? That's what the story is for, to kind like that you're not thinking, where did those guys come from? Why am I killing orcs, or why am I killing these demons or skeletons? And so Diablo's just there to give you the plot of that guy made them appear.
Yeah, like when there's when you have gameplay in something and you have like some sort of, I'm trying to think of the right word, but I guess I'll say like when you have some story like just missing, and maybe there's still story, but like a lot of it is missing. Like it feels like it doesn't feel like correct. Like to a human that feels very weird, and it causes like this feeling of the developer failed to communicate something and just kind of threw stuff in. So it feels like it gives a very strange feeling if all of a sudden you're fighting. Actually, you know, where I can think of this example is like in Call of Duty Black Ops 3, they had this story, and it was like pretty much the worst Call of Duty storyline, because they just skipped out on some parts of the story and some parts of the character development, and then all of a sudden like stuff was happening, and it was this really strange feeling of like, what did I miss? Why is this happening? So I mean, when you like include something gameplay wise, you want to make sure the story, like no matter how fleshed out it is, does like align with it, or like maybe properly introduce some part of the gameplay or some battle.
Okay, yeah, that kind of reminds me of Metal Gear Solid on the PlayStation, where the story continues from the MSX versions that were, I think, Japan only. So, like in the West, you were like, "Who is Liquid?" Like Solid Snake is like, "Oh my god, it's Liquid," and you're like, "Who the fuck is that guy?" so it's like, yeah, am I supposed to know that person? And there's some backstory that you just don't understand because you haven't played the previous games, and then you just, as a player, you kind of feel a bit lost. I mean, you complete the game, but then you think, okay, you don't understand the relations between the characters completely in this case.
Yeah.
All right, then I guess like the current trend, it feels for me, is that the big companies go for open world games, while as an indie developer, because you cannot compete with the budget. You cannot compete with the budget and how big the world is gonna be. You focus more on the linear experience.
Yeah. I think so as well. Like, if it's going to be open world, then the world should probably be small and communicate everything well, rather than be a large world with empty parts.
Yeah, or just imagine you have like 20 villages, but only 10 are relevant, and the rest is just like blah blah blah. I like meatloaf, or like some filler text, and you think, yeah, why are those people there?
Yeah. As an indie, you probably want to make everything like have some relevance, because that's another thing that can kind of make it feel like something was attempted to be communicated, but it just failed. Like having an empty NPC village, or like a lot of them, where it's just the NPCs like will say one thing, and then maybe there's a merchant, but then they don't really serve any other purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. Concerning the setting, like we talked about, a lot of RPGs go for the medieval setting, and yeah, I think personally that might be a bit overused, because if you have played 20 mage and knight RPGs, then do I really want to play the 21st? And so in this case, if you go for that setting, then you must have something special that makes you stand out from all the thousands of medieval RPG games.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, sci-fi is also popular, but I think not that overused, and I think it's also more, I guess, not that generic, because like the universe is so big, and so you are kind of free to create whatever characters or monsters that you can imagine.
Personally, I'm I've never really liked medieval much, but I like the medieval games that have like compellence to them, like Skyrim and like Lord of the Rings games. But I think I like sci-fi is my favorite genre, so I might be biased, but yeah, I think it also doesn't really have like, I don't think it really has used its full potential in terms of RPG yet, and I think that's especially because like sci-fi kind of is getting bigger now that effects in like movies and games are like more realistic looking, so people can do more I guess convincing things. So like now it's kind of more on the rise than it was before, I think.
I also think it's more about the base that you can actually create.
Mm-hmm.
In the past, you were so like limited through the file size and how big can the game be, or I mean, you had to think about what can a 233 megahertz CPU actually render, and then you say, yeah, okay, I can only have three enemies on the screen, because else the game starts to lag, or sprites or models start to disappear, and so in that case also you say, okay, I can only make a map that's like 100, no, let's say 10,000 square meters. While now you can say, I'm gonna create 10 planets, and they are all like 20 times the size of
yeah.
old maps. Just so you concerning sci-fi, you can create a universe, while in the past you could only create a world, like one planet.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's also a very big difference. That now, like, sci-fi is becoming popular because you actually have the possibility to make it believable. Because if you have a sci-fi RPG and it's like, oh no, our planet is doomed, but you have these huge ships where you can just fly to other planets, then you think, why don't they just leave and go to a different planet? I don't get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. So I guess should we talk about the technicals? I guess of like making one.
Sure.
All right. Well, I don't have much, but I guess in terms of making one, it's an RPG. It's definitely a reasonable task, but you want to consider scope, like what we were saying with open world. Like you want to avoid like making large environments if if you're a small team that can't really make too much content for it. And I think we also said, one sec. Yeah, so I was also saying, I usually say scope down, but I also usually say you want to use the tools like laid out for you, because like now there's a lot of, tutorials and frameworks and all that kind of stuff for making an RPG. And then depending on your combat system, there's probably stuff or assets for that as well. So I mean, whatever you don't have to do, you want to avoid doing, because you're. There are obviously AAA people making RPGs that people are very interested in playing, and and no question, like the biggest base of players are not going to play your game. So like people who kind of just game like casually to play Skyrim a little bit and then like move on with their lives and don't play games much probably won't play your game. But I mean, the more niche RPG players are the people who are going to be into it. And I think the thing you want to do is give them some fundamental feature of the game that's really compelling that you don't see in something like Skyrim, so that they can like try that out in your game, because they don't really get it from a AAA game.
Then they will also tell their friends or maybe like Twitter followers or something to play the game because of that feature.
Yeah, exactly. You want to use the tools that are laid out for you to do like whatever scope you've already like chosen, and to do like whatever feature that you picked. Like maybe you have really realistic sword combat where you actually like pick a direction and like the swords will clash if you both strike at the same time or something like that. And if you think about it, like Skyrim has pretty bad sword combat. Like you hit the guy a lot and it doesn't make any realistic sense. But like your game maybe will do something like that. I think like the final thing I have written down is that when you're writing like the design for a game, like you don't want to have boring progression. Like you want to have a balanced kind of number progression that's not just based on grinding and doing the same thing over and over again before you can, I don't know, accomplish some task like get the next weapon or level up or move on to the next area. You basically you'll want to make that progression. You want to make the means to progress like interesting or fun to play, and not just a tedious task that somebody has to do to get to the next part. So yeah, that's my dev side of thinking about making an RPG as an indie, I think.
I think my last note also plays kind of into the progression part, which is that the difficulty of the game should not be too easy or too difficult. Because if it's too easy, then the game is kind of boring to play because it's not challenging. just imagine you just run through the RPG. Let's say you have a linear RPG, but you never feel challenged. So it's like, yeah, you just press attack, and then boss dies, and next area, and then it's just pressing attack all the time, which is pretty boring.
Yeah.
But if the enemies are too strong and you kind of force the player to grind for an hour or two before they can advance to the next dungeon or kind of survive that dungeon, then it's also kind of a hassle, because maybe you have a good story, but the game is so difficult that like you have the player being interested in the story, but he cannot progress because he has to grind for 2 hours to actually be able to progress. And I think that's something to keep in mind, and how it can influence the fun aspect of the game.
Yeah, for sure.
Because then it kind of feels maybe like work, or if it's too easy, then
Boring.
Then you might think, why do we actually have to do the fights? Can't you just show me the story? Because there's no challenge.
Yeah.
You just press buttons like attack for 5 minutes and then you win. Why can't you just get into the fight, press attack once, win, and then progress the story, correct?
Yeah.
Also, something to pay attention to is that if you use something like a save feature, where you can only save at specific points in the game, for example, at some terminal or stone or camp or something, then you should also avoid the chance of soft locking the player, which means, let's say that the player is underleveled and he's closed in a cave, so he cannot go outside anymore, and the only thing that awaits him as he goes further into the cave is a boss fight. But the player is low on health health items or mana items, and he's underleveled. So in that case, the player is soft locked because he's too weak to kill the boss.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the items to balance it out by healing himself.
Mm-hmm.
So the only option that he has is dying, but he cannot level up to get stronger because he's kind of captured in that cave. He cannot escape. So the only thing that the player can do is remember to grind before that cave and restart the game from the start, and that's not fun.
Yeah, it's pretty annoying.
No. All right, yeah, that's my last point concerning RPGs.
Okay, well, I think I am all done with saying any dev stuff then.
Okay, then I hope our listeners found our podcast informative again. And I mean, RPGs, you can do so much stuff with the genre, what you focus on and what you don't focus on. And if you're a good story writer, then you can do a lot by just writing a good story as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess there are so many varieties of RPG games.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I hope that you, as a listener, maybe as a player, you just understood more about how the games function, or maybe like you didn't really think about, is the game kind of forcing me to grind, and you just did it naturally. So maybe you also understand what's good and what's bad about some RPGs. And as a developer, of course, we hope that you learn more about what to focus on, what do people actually remember about games, and what like good and bad stuff, of course, and learn from the mistakes and learn from the good things that other developers did.
Yeah.
And so that's it for episode 22. And thanks for listening. And I hope you tune in again next week for episode 23.